Hey, everybody, welcome back to this episode of Think Business Live. I'm looking forward to talking with Karl Maier, founder of Abunden. Karl, I'm really looking forward to this talk. I have been since your agency got you on the show, which I was really excited to see, because your company Abunden is all about growing management teams and making management teams more effective. Your thing, if people were to go to your website, it talks about great management teams motivate people who then grow companies. I couldn't agree anymore. I mean, I completely agree with that. Motivate, influence, really lead the business. Your business, which we'll get into, offers practical, easy to use tools for building great management teams based on experience, and we'll get into your product and all of that. But I want to talk about the power of a good manager, because I think it makes or breaks a company. And some companies, and I think there's kind of like this fine line, right? There's companies that promote people because they were good at their job to management, and then they don't train their managers. I see this as a business coach all the time. So the managers don't really know how to manage people. They just were really good at their job. Then there are companies that have managers in place but don't train them. So they kind of create their own management style, which some are effective, some are not. And then there's so many tentacles to it. We could go on and on, which I know we'll explore. But let's talk about your product and how it came about. I want to understand the essence of and the soul of the building to what you saw in the marketplace and why you created this tool.
Right. That's a really good question. One of the real kind of transition points for me personally was I worked with a company, was recruited to a small company as a CFO, and worked with the CEO, and we grew, as part of the team, we grew the company 7x, revenue 7x in 4 years. It was going really well. We were really excited. And then that CEO got sick, like never ever come back into work again sick. And it was a family closely held company.
Sorry to hear about that.
Yes, it was, very sad. But another family member stepped in and said, I'm going to be the CEO. It's like, great. So, but with that same management team, same customer base, same market, same employees, I mean, everything except we switched the CEO, the company just went down faster than it had gone up. And to me, that was like, wow, if you could design a experiment in the power of management, that would be it.
Yeah.
So taking all the lessons I'd learned from that growth period and what not to do in the other is really where I pushed forward with Abunden.
What was it about the management style or management styles, not only in that experience, but in others, where you saw the biggest mistakes, not only that managers made, but that leaders of the company allowed to be made?
Right. Wow.
That's a big question.
Big question.
Yeah.
A few different directions you could go with that. One is just knowing where we're going. If we don't all agree on where we're going, if we're all rowing in different directions, we're going to end up going in a circle.
Right.
Certainly, one that I've seen more than once. Other times, as you just pointed out, how you promote people, how you train your management team, is just essential to growing a company.
Yeah. Let's talk about training for a minute, because I think managers are one of the biggest groups in companies that need training, yet I think they're the most overlooked group to be trained. I as a business coach, I work with solopreneurs to Fortune 100 companies, everything in between. I work with C-level execs and leaders and owners, managers, salespeople, etc. But I always find it interesting the amount of managers that companies don't invest in. And so talk a little bit about that from your perspective. Where does training play a role, and what type of training, and how often?
Right. So to me, training starts at the lowest level, first level supervisor. That's your first opportunity to have a big impact.
Yeah.
And, it's relatively simple, straightforward tools. It's not, oh, we need to develop a leadership, ideal. And, it's, I need you to meet with your people regularly and listen to them.
Yeah.
And hey, here's a
Define
template.
regularly. Because
Yeah.
right. So that was so simple. It's complicated. Meet
Right.
with your people regularly, and listen. Right. So meeting with your people regularly doesn't mean you have to have an hour meeting. You can meet with them regularly at a 5-minute huddle every day, or at 15-minute effective meetings with agendas. Like I encourage my clients, you don't want death by meeting, but you do want, and then you want to be present so you can actually listen and hear what's not being heard and seeing what's not being seen, because there's the undercurrent of everything. So just kind of talk about that. What does regularly mean, and what is listening? How do you define listening?
Right. First, regularly, it should vary. If you've got a production worker, it's not going to be the same as if you're managing a high level programmer or, professional. So the 5 minutes, twice a week, hey, just checking in is great for, more of a production worker, where, if you've got more of a office professional and we've got a complicated communication situation, maybe 30 minutes once a week would be more appropriate.
Right.
So find what makes sense for your situation, your company.
Yeah.
And then the second part about listening, we're all taught from a child, we go through school, we listen, and we're taught to listen to respond. Answer, I'm going to ask the class a question. Oh, I know the answer. That's how we're taught to listen through, for 20 years, however many years we go through school. And that's one way to listen. Another way to listen is to listen to understand. And that's very different. And that is a real big transition that I've found for helping managers to listen to understand.
Yeah, that's really good. I really like that. One of the things I find is, as a manager, these meetings, whether they're 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I don't recommend longer than a half an hour. Those are strategy meetings. Those are next step. What do I do? What's my next step type meetings? A lot of business and a little bit of personal connection, so you can build the relationship capital, and all of that kind of builds the trust. But you got to be there as a resource to help influence and grow the person, one little step, one little piece every single time. Yeah. I want to rewind before you get into your product, because as you talk about kind of, your history and, your kind of wisdom on listening and those steps, I want to rewind kind of, you go back, take me back 20, 30 years, what seed was planted in you that you can kind of reflect on that kind of started the seed to this business? I can go back and say the seed that my dad planted at 18 was the seed that I knew I was going to be starting my coaching business and writing books and coaching and speaking, although that didn't happen until I was 42, but the seed was planted then. So tell me about what seeds were planted in your life and by whom.
Absolutely. So, quick story. When I was 10 years old, one day my parents came and asked my sister and I if we wanted to go to Disney World. And of course, when do we leave? We're ready.
Yeah.
And so the day came and we all hopped in the car and we're driving to the airport. And we're going to meet the cousins and the grandparents. And so I'm the inquisitive kid and I'm, well, what airline are we flying? We're in Ohio. How are we going to get down to Florida? And they said, well, actually, we're not going to fly an airline. We're going to fly on a private plane. And it was like, oh my gosh, what?
There you go. We've made it. Right.
Right. We're driving an Oldsmobile. How
Right.
do we get this? And come to find out that my grandfather, many years before, had helped this gentleman who'd become incredibly successful. And he was saying thank you to my grandfather and taking his whole clan on this little trip. And so I kept asking questions, of course, because I was that kid. And, well, wait, if we lend him the money, why don't we have the planes? And so eventually my parents had enough and said, we're on vacation, go play with your cousin, go away. But that led me, to start reading the Wall Street Journal. By the time I was 12, I was reading it every day, so on and so forth. The seed was planted.
Yeah.
That's my story. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. It's funny how small things make such a big imprint on us at such an early age. So now let's talk about you, the entrepreneur, right? So you started Abunden when?
3 years ago.
So you started 3 years ago, and now 12 months into you starting the business, the world really changes with COVID, right? So now take us to, kind of like mid-March 2020. Where management and managing teams has never been more important because of the hybrid model that I personally don't think is going away 100%. So how over the last 3 years have you pivoted and adapted to market changes, culture changes, office changes, et cetera, with your business?
Right before the pandemic, I was very focused on fractional management, helping companies as a fractional manager. And when all the chaos hit March of last year, I kind of sat down and said, okay, I've helped these companies double sales in 2 years, and so forth. What have I done? And I kind of looked at the common elements and I said, every time I've implemented these same tools, and in the back of my head somewhere, somebody had told me, well, if you use a spreadsheet twice, put it into a database. And so a little bit of a hyperbole there, but that's basically what I did. I said, these are the tools that I've used. I'm going to put them into an online SaaS platform so that other advisors, other managers have access to them at a very, low cost. They don't have to develop these tools themselves, and customizable, flexible. That's what I would love to have, and I think others would love to have it too.
And that's the evolution of your business.
Yep, that was the transition. Now we're a software company.
Yeah. What I love about what you're talking about is you had a fundamental way that you did something, and you realized that you could monetize it. Right. And sometimes I think people get stuck in thinking, I do it this way, but this is so obvious and so simple, everyone must think this as well. This isn't an idea for a business, when really, in many cases, it is, right? As long as I think you're in your passion, and as long as there's a product that people actually pay for. So what gave you the courage? How did you beta test to realize, oh, wow, people don't have this and they need it and they'll actually pay for it?
Right. I've started 2 software companies in the past. I've done some software things. So I did a little, what do they call it, MVP, minimal viable product, and started showing it to people. And it was terrible programming interface because I'm not the great programmer, but I got some feedback, and from that just iterated, and brought in a team and got all the fancy programmers now. And so we just you just started by, here's something small, and started showing it to people. And, does this look interesting? Well, yeah, if you could do X and then Y. And so listen to the customers.
Yeah. I love it. Baby steps, ask, and just going back to what you said, being a really good listener, right? Listening to the feedback so you can change the nuances. All right. So now let's talk about your product, right? So your product, Abunden is, offering these easy to use tools for building management teams. So how does it work?
Basically, there's a few things that every company needs. You need to know where you're going. So we've got a one-page business plan to help you share that information with everybody. Once you know that, well, what's the team look like? And that's the drag and drop org charts that you saw on the homepage there. We don't need to go to Excel or PowerPoint or whatever to make this complicated. It's easy to drag and drop in real time and have a discussion about your people. Then we need structured management meetings to make decisions. We need tools to train supervisors and monitor their performance, kind of what you're talking about, training managers. Then we track our processes so that we have repeatable business processes so we can scale. And then we've got tools to help train people. You record a video of how to do something, train somebody, and then you can repurpose it, and it's easy to find.
I love everything you're talking about, but the video element of things, I'm always encouraging people, like, use video for training because you can repurpose it. If people leave, you then have the video library that you've created to train person B. Person B leaves or gets let go. Person C comes in. Here's 50 videos that we've created. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, and when we look at time savings of giving somebody on-demand access to training and then live training, it's huge, right? You save 4 minutes a day. That's 24 hours a year. Times multiply that times people and resources and things of that nature. It adds up to months and years. So I love everything that you're talking about. And so your ideal client is who, Karl?
Two avatars. One is business advisors, coaches, exit planners, CFOs, CPAs that say, I'd like to have these tools to use in my practice with my clients. And so you can become a Abundant ambassador and do that. Or if you're a champion in your own organization for, say, I want to bring this structure into my organization. I have an understanding of how to do it. I can just use these tools extremely cost effectively.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. All right. Ready for a quick speed round?
Absolutely.
All right. Favorite book and why? I see you have a lot of books behind you.
I love books.
Yeah.
Tough to pick one, but I'll go with Thinking Fast and Slow, Kahneman.
It's a great book. It's a great book. Yeah, it's a great book. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Put your head down, keep working, and one day your ship will come in.
Yeah. Yeah. Show up every day. Yeah, absolutely. And I think this last year and a half has shown that, like, just keep going, absolutely keep going. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Finish this sentence. One thing every leader needs to observe more effectively with their managers is
listening. That's my number one.
Yeah. Yeah. That's well said. Define yourself in one word.
Perseverance.
Fast forward 100 years. What do you want your legacy to be?
Managers are making work better for all their people.
I love it. Karl, tell everybody where they can connect with you.
You can find me on LinkedIn with Karl Maier. You can search for Abunden or go to abunden.com. A bun in a fox's den. Hamburger bun in a fox's den.
Very good. I like it. Well, Karl, it's been a pleasure. I enjoyed getting to know you. I'm looking forward to even learning more about your product. But I always appreciate people coming and sharing their story about a void that they saw in the marketplace and then a solution to help. And I think it's great. Think community, if Karl can help you, reach out, abunden.com. Karl, stay on for just a few. And thanks, everybody. Have an awesome day.